Okay, so once again, we want to acknowledge our sponsors for this particular segment, Lipton Tea and Baltic Natural Mineral Water. Now, joining me in the studio this morning, I have Dr. Andre Kwesikuma. He is the medical director at the Eden Family Hospital. Good morning, Doc.
Good morning.
How are you?
Fine. How are you doing too?
I'm fine, thank you very much, sir. Okay, first off, let's just establish something. Here in Ghana or in Africa, we call it foot rot, but the medical term is athlete's foot?
Yeah, athlete's foot.
Okay.
Most people refer to it as foot rot, but actually it's athlete's foot.
Okay. Now, let's just clarify a few things. Now, foot rot actually affects animals as well as humans.
No, there's a similar condition in animals.
Right.
Yes, but the picture and everything tends to be different.
Okay.
It affects the legs of animals.
Okay, so it goes up all the way.
Yeah,
okay.
But in humans, it's kind of a total different story.
Okay.
So that's why the name tends to be different.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get into it then. What causes athlete's foot?
Well, it's caused by a microorganism called fungi. Like the germs, they're in different groups. We have the viruses, the bacteria, and then the fungus.
Mm-hmm.
So what leads to athlete's foot is caused by fungus, different types.
Right.
The most common one is Trichophyton rubrum, quite a long name.
Mm-hmm.
And when it affects the interdigital spaces, the spaces between the toes,
yeah.
then the infections take root, and then it leads to what we call the athlete's foot.
Okay. Now, is it contagious? Because we've always heard that once you do have athlete's foot, better known as foot rot in Ghana, that as soon as you put on socks or shoes, if anybody was to share those, then they would automatically get foot rot or athlete's foot. So how contagious is it, if it is contagious?
Yeah, it is. That's how it get passed on from person to person.
Right.
Because if you share footwear with somebody who has foot rot, it's going to be passed on from one person to the other.
Right.
When the infection takes root in the skin and then you put on socks or shoes, it tends to be shed off into these footwear or socks. In the same way also, if you're using a similar pool and you're swimming, the organism can get passed on from one person to the other. Or if you are sharing the same shower.
Right.
Yes, and it can get passed on, use the same towel or sleep in the same bed, similar bed sheets and so on. That's how it gets passed on from person to person.
Okay. So what's the treatment then, Doc?
Since it is a fungal infection, we use antifungal treatment.
Okay.
And there's some powder we use. The antifungal treatment, it can come in creams, powder, etc. But for athlete's foot, we use the powder form to apply to those areas to kill the organism right at the spot.
Right.
And then during the treatment, people are advised to go bare feet because when there's a moist environment, that's when the organisms tend to thrive. So it must be dry. So as much as possible, they should wear open sandals or slippers with the powder applied. That's how come the treatment will go faster.
So the name itself, was it actually derived from athletes? I mean, because they were constantly wearing their shoes, and that's how the moisture and the sweat built up.
Yes, exactly so. Because most athletes, will wear shoes for sports. Yeah. So that's how come. So they tend to get it, and because they move in teams and use the same locker rooms or shower rooms, it gets passed on from person to person. So that's how come the name. I mean, if you go back into history, that's how it developed. It was very common among athletes.
Yeah.
In team sports. So that's how the name came at athlete's foot.
Okay. So let's just say that we've taken the doctor's advice, we've applied the antifungal powder, we're keeping our toes airy, we've managed to get rid of the athlete's foot. What's the chances of getting it all over again?
Well, as we said earlier, you get it from somebody who has infection. So the best way is to prevent getting close to somebody who's infected with the infection.
Okay.
With the athlete's foot, because when you get near, you can get it. But you see, if we are the things we're talking about, keeping your immunity very good with good diet, etc. If your immunity is very strong, the infection wouldn't take root. As opposed to somebody whose immunity is low. Okay. So preventing it also means that you must eat healthy and build a strong immunity. Okay. So that even if it comes to you, it will not take root as much as somebody who has low immunity. So that's the way of preventing.
Is it irrespective of age at all? I mean, do kids get it? Adults get it? It doesn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. It goes across ages and it goes across gender, so anybody can get it.
Anybody can get it at any point in time.
Yes, but as you say, immunity tends to be lower in children and then very, very elderly.
Okay.
So they are higher risk.
Higher risk.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Now, let's just say that it goes untreated. What's the extreme of dealing with athlete's foot?
Okay, just like skin infection, it could spread. So it could spread from in between the gates of the toes to the sole of the feet.
Right.
Yeah, and then it could come up to the skin to the groin.
Oh, really?
Yes. And you see, the symptoms is that the skin tends to break. You know, there's the cracking of the skin and sores will form. So when that happens, another type of infection, bacteria, could also get onto it and get complicated. Therefore, then you see fluids coming out of it.
Right.
So that
like pus and all the rest.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. So a bacterial infection gets superimposed on the fungal infection.
Right.
Yes, and that could lead to chronic sores and so on.
So what would be the extreme circumstance? I mean, could it lead to amputation, or could you lose part of your flesh?
No, this normally will not lead to amputation, unless probably the person has diabetes and then the infection sets in and we have a diabetic foot. That is a different thing altogether that may lead to amputation. This one, the complication, strictly speaking, of athlete's foot is that it spreads throughout the whole body, leading to itching all over. The person will be scratching, and then sores will be coming all over, and bacterial infection will get in. That's how it gets complicated.
Okay. Now, you did say it's a fungal disease. So does that mean that it's not something that can be handed down, within the family, hereditary, through genes?
No, this one is a contagious disease.
It's a contagious disease.
It gets passed on from person to person through the sharing of items and so on. But does not go through the genetic line or pass on from person to person. If it's going to spread in a family, it's by the contagious routes, not the genetic routes.
Okay. Now, we've talked about treatment, but how about prevention? How does somebody who's never experienced athlete's foot or foot rot stay away from it?
Well, personal hygiene is number one, and then keeping personal items to one person. Yes. Right. So to avoid sharing or using other people's items. In secondary school, somebody will lose a towel and then use a friend's towel, or has lost a socks, borrow somebody's socks, etc. Borrow somebody's shoes. Those are the risks that are involved in passing on the infection from one person to the other. So to prevent getting foot rot, just use your personal items and not pass it to somebody else.
Would, for instance, wearing slippers in the shower prevent you from further, passing on the foot rot or the athlete's foot to other people?
No, sir. Are you talking to somebody who has it already?
Yeah, let's just say I personally have athlete's foot, and I decide to take a shower with my slippers on. Does that prevent other people from getting it in that surrounding area?
No, because it thrives in a moist environment. When you wear slippers, you have foot rot, and you shower, you could shed the fungus onto the water around. So somebody else who comes and steps in.
So slippers don't matter at all?
They don't matter at all, yeah. Right. So once it gets into the moist environment, somebody comes in, the person could get it. Even in a swimming pool, you're swimming, the other swimmers in, it could get passed on.
Even with all the chemicals in normal pools, chlorine and all the rest of it, is still highly contagious?
Yes, it can happen. Chlorine to a certain extent kills a number of organisms, but does not kill all the organisms.
Right.
Yes. So there is a chance that it can pass on from person to person. Sometimes when people get it and want to investigate, realize the person has been swimming a lot, and that's how they get it, or they are in a team or shares, other people's personal items. That's how they get it.
Okay.
So chlorine does not clear everything; it clears a large percentage, but there's some that still gets passed on from person to person.
Okay. Now I know another reason why it's commonly known as foot rot is because of some of the stench that comes along with the ailment. Is that the only thing that comes about? You mentioned it could be pussy, but is the stench one of the major indicators or the symptoms to know that you have athlete's foot?
Yes, exactly. That's how, of course. So that's how we give the name foot rot in Ghana here, because it's like your feet are rotting because of the odor that comes with it.
Yeah.
Usually infections tend to move with bad odor. So when the person removes the shoe and the socks, the odor comes out, and then we say that person has rotten foot or foot rot, actually it's athlete's foot. Yes, aside that and the parts that comes, there's also breaking of the skin.
Right. The
skin will become dry, and it will break, and then be very itchy.
Okay.
So the person will be scratching.
So is it advisable then, for instance, for somebody who has athlete's foot to basically, get rid of the current, socks that they may be wearing? Totally, because will washing take away all of the fungus?
Yeah, washing can help. If you wash with very good soap and dry it in the sun, it will take it away, and then you just keep it yourself. Nobody else uses it. While you're on treatment, it helps to a large extent. But while you're on treatment, it's advisable not to wear shoes and socks. So just open sandals while on treatment, so the treatment will go faster and then the socks and shoes will have to rest for a while. Dry them in the sun, because the sun has an effect of also killing the organisms.
Okay.
If it's exposed to it for a very long time.
All right. So a lot of cleaning and making sure that the footwear is completely and utterly dry.
Yeah.
Before wearing them.
Yeah. And it's advisable to use leather shoes, and then the socks as well, to avoid nylon socks.
Okay.
Nylon socks tend to trap a lot of moisture than the cotton socks. So the type of socks and shoes also, basically we say shoes and socks that can breathe,
right,
that can allow aeration, air exchange. But the ones that entrap air tend to make the illness worse.
Okay. Doc, I want to thank you once again for coming in and talking about athlete's foot, aka foot rot. And this has been our health club, which is brought to you by Lipton Tea and Baltic Natural Mineral Water.